We're going to go and see a friend of mine, Dr. Roger Leir. Dr. Leir is a podiatrist and a surgeon, and he was drawn into the so-called alien implant removal. He's done about 16 of these surgeries, and they are absolutely phenomenal. We are going to get up close and personal with what these surgeries were and what Dr. Leir discovered when he took these implants out of human beings. What are we looking at here? I mean, I'm looking at, and I can see these like what appear to be implants. The skeptic's going to say, well, it's a BB gun or it's a wire from another operation. What are these objects we're looking at in the x-rays?
Well, I prefer really, Lynn, to take the skeptical point of view because I'm the one that's involved with it. So as far as I'm concerned, these are two cases in which there appears to be metallic foreign body. We don't know whether it's an implant or whether somebody picked up a flying nail. And these are two different cases. As you can see, this one appears to be in the joint, but it's really not. It's in probably soft tissue with what we call a patellar tendon here. But this is an elongated object, and you can see it's metallic. And we know that it's metallic because in reference to the density of the bone, you can see that it's metal. This one here, these two cases, by the way, have not been done yet. These are pending surgeries that we'll do in the future. We use an X-ray device called a C-arm. And the C-arm is a live mobile unit, so that if you make an incision and you insert an instrument, you can see it as you're doing it.
Wow.
And it makes it a lot easier to locate the object and clamp it. Sometimes we found in doing these implant cases that the object moves.
I want to stop you there for a moment because what you just said, I mean, you've traveled in this, you've witnessed it, but for the viewers who are listening to this for the first time, you just said the object moved. Can you clarify that the object moved away from you on its own power somehow? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. In these cases where you're dealing with a metallic object that's inside the body, you don't see anything from the outside with the naked eye. But when you insert an instrument in the tissue, most of the surgical instruments are stainless steel, and they're supposed to not have any kind of a magnetic field. But for whatever the reason, they seem to react with the magnetic field of the object, and it's as if two like ends of the magnet are towards each other, and the object gets propelled somewhere else. So we've seen this over and over and over again.
I want to get sort of the personal side of the story. When does a person, how do they first contact you and why? What is bothering that person that they would seek you out to begin with?
Well, they usually seek me out now. I mean, this is a drastic difference than when I started this, but we've done 16 surgeries today. So my name is known basically all over the world for doing this kind of research. But so when they come to me today, today's date and time, they usually feel, number one, that they've been involved in the alien abduction phenomena, and that they have an object. Or that they might have an object.
Okay.
What happened to you 20 years ago?
Oh, probably had a car accident, and a sighting. Learned quite a bit about God and the universe in a very short period of time. Feel to be a very fortunate man. And
Hi. Mike has been in on all these surgeries.
I truly understand the enormity of some of the statements I probably have made.
Yeah. Do you think that...
But I feel that... How do you put it? The truth will set you free, I guess, is the only way you can look at it.
This was a patient who had one in the wrist. This came out of the wrist, and it's probably was 3/4 bigger than this. piece. This piece is the piece that's left. This one you should be able to get in.
That's very big. Where did that come out of?
This one, if I remember correctly, was out of a forearm.
Now, is that in a blood type serum? Or
this is it, yeah. This is in the serum from the patient. We find that they seem to be quite happy as long as there's some preservative that's like the human body that it came out of.
I understand you've got some scientific data on the alien implants. Can you explain that to us, please?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we do is we try and look at these objects from the outside in, so to speak. So when we've gotten the amount of data that we need to get from looking at the outside, then we go deeper into the object and try and get more data as we go through it. And one of the modalities for doing this is testing called an SEM and an EDX. And we're actually looking at one instrument, which is the scanning electron microscope.
SEM. Okay.
SEM. And the EDX is only a term for breaking it down to be quite simple, getting the definitive elements that the object is composed of. And for example, here you see that there are two very large peaks. And at the top of the peak, you see there's an FE. Well, an FE stands for iron. So we can tell that the most abundant element in these objects is the iron. So just from looking at that alone doesn't really mean anything. But when you go further through, some of the other graphs, if we were to come up, for example, where we're starting to see nickel in these graphs, and then the ratio of nickel, for example, to the amount of iron that's seen, will give us a clue as to what kind of iron is this. I mean, is this something from Home Depot, or is this something from the Pleiades? So when we see a certain nickel-iron ratio in graphs just like this, we can say in most instances now that we know that it contains meteoric iron, because there's a specific nickel-iron ratio in meteorites. But one of the meteorites found on Earth, one category of meteorites, is a nickel-iron meteorite. Okay. The large meteorite strike in Arizona that created the huge crater was one of these nickel iron meteorites, and of course you can tell by digging through the fragments. So that's the elemental analysis, which is part of scanning electron microscopy. And the other thing, we can use it to take pictures. So we can look at a first few, maybe up to 10 nanometers, just below the surface. Or we can crank up the beam, so to speak, so you get a heavy bombardment of electrons, and we can start to take pictures that are 20 nanometers or 40 nanometers going down through the object.
What did the SEM show you that was anomalous regarding the implants?
We use the data and results, and we can see structures. Wow. Structures like carbon nanotubes. You can see this is a structure. And this happens to be a structure, we don't know what it is. So we find things down in the deep crevices of the metal on an atomic level, and they can be ovoids, they can be spheres, or they can have other shapes.
And these do not occur in nature, correct? These nanotubes?
These do not occur in nature, and they don't really occur in the natural process of metallurgy that we use to put unlike metals together and form a compound metal, which we call an alloy. So if we find an alloy of aluminum and iron, it would not look like this. This is something else. Now this is a very interesting one because it shows a line going across here, which is a definitive boundary line. And this is kind of interesting because you don't find in usual metallurgy metallic boundaries such as it's showing.
Any
here.
idea what that might be used for?
The only thing that we can come up with is that there were two dissimilar elements that were put together for a reason.
If a skeptic were to look at the evidence, specifically the implants and some of the work that you've done with these, how would they refute them? Metallurgy, which was done off this world. Would you say that this is sort of a smoking gun? Could you call it a smoke? I mean, let me ask, I guess where I'm going with this is there any possible way that our government could create the nanotubes found in these implants, in your opinion?
I personally consider skeptics psychics. I tell them, I say, well, you seem to know everything that there is to know about what I'm talking about or somebody else is talking about, but you never look at the data. So therefore, you must be psychic. So that's in reference to skeptics. Now, in reference to the rest of the question, the smoking gun. Yeah, I would say this is pretty much of a smoking gun. We do know, as I stated before, that black budget science is way, way ahead of academic science. But I tend to doubt, just on a personal basis from what I've seen, that they know how to do all these kind of things.